Today we're going to be talking about xylem. Title for your notes can be xylem. I'm going to move through this kind of quickly, so feel free to just pause anytime you need to stop and write something down. So we're going to be talking about the structure, function, and materials transported by xylem. So the first word that we're going to talk about is vascular. And vascular means relating to, affecting, or consisting of vessels or a vessel. So in humans, which one of these would be considered vascular tissue? Which one has the vessels? Yeah, this would be our circulatory system. This is transporting things, blood vessels. But what about plants? Plants don't have blood, so they have to figure out how they're going to transport things. So plants have vascular tissue. There's actually two types of plants. You don't need to know that there are two different types of plants. I'm just telling you this. There are ones that have these vessels that transport things, and then there are ones that do not. And I actually have some of these pictures here. These are examples of ones that don't have the vascular tissue, and then these are the ones that do. So vascular plants have vessels. Non-vascular plants are things like moss, and they don't really have vessels. You'll learn about them in a different class. So vascular plants. Here's where we need to start. Okay, this is where you'll write down. There are two types of vascular tissue in plants, xylem and phloem. And we're going to learn that they transport different things. So first thing we're going to talk about is xylem. Xylem is made up of dead cells. So they're leftover cells, and they transport water, minerals, and hormones. Here's a picture. You can't really see the cells here, but it's made up of cells, flows in one direction. We get water and minerals. So remember, a plant needs water. We need water for photosynthesis, right? The roots take in water. You know that if you don't water a plant, it's going to be dead. But that water has to get from the roots to all other places, and the xylem is going to take it there. It only transports water in one direction. So it only transports it from the roots up to the leaves. It doesn't ever go in the reverse direction because we don't have any water that's really being made up here. The only time plants get water is from the soil and from their roots. All right, so go ahead, pause if you need more time. I'm going to move on. So how exactly does water move throughout the plant? So here's what happens. We get water that's evaporating from these little holes in the leaf. The little holes are called stomata. We learned about that. And it's just evaporation that's happening from the leaf. And so transpiration is just that evaporation. Think about when you drink out of a straw, okay? If you suck some of that liquid out of the top of the straw, the rest of the liquid moves up. Well, water moves in the same way. So transpiration, because some water is leaving, the rest of the water gets sucked up to fill that empty space. Now, we also have something called osmosis, and we actually call this successive osmosis, okay? And osmosis, we've already heard about. Remember the movement of water from high to low? So what happens is we remove some of the water up here, right? There's less water up here because it's evaporating. And so because there's less and there's more here, it moves into the next cell. It moves up. And now because we just moved some here, there's less than in this cell. So this is our high to our low, and it moves up. And now this cell doesn't have very much, but this cell has a lot, and so it moves up. And so we call this osmosis, and successive osmosis is the term you're going to hear. Successive meaning osmosis from one cell to the next. So, which way shows the correct way that water flows through the xylem? Left picture or right picture? You should have said the left picture because it's going from high to low. Okay, so water is going to move into this cell, then it's going to move into this cell. So high to low. Now, remember we said that if you take some liquid out of the straw, other liquid's going to come up Well, this is because water is actually really sticky, more so than any other substance. It has these forces called cohesion. Cohesion means the water molecules stick together. And water sticks together really well. So when some of the water molecules leave through the leaf, other ones that are stuck to the water that's leaving end up being pulled up. We'll do some demonstrations to talk more about this. Water is also really good at sticking to other things, like sticking to the walls of vessels or the walls of xylem. We'll look at some demonstrations for this. So this also helps the water move up into the plant. I'm going to skip that video. So we are going, last but not least, we're going to talk about the third thing here. And at the bottom of the plant, water is pulled into the root hair cells. We'll talk about the different layers of the root, but basically we know that transpiration, the evaporation from the leaf, is driving, pulling that water up, okay? And then eventually, as it's being pulled up, some has to come in and enter the root hairs. So it's pulled into the root hairs. So we can see here, here's a root hair. There's lots of layers. We're going to talk about these layers in a second. So we have a picture of a root, and this is a cross section. And we're going to be labeling this to show how the water goes into the root. So the first thing we need to label are the root hairs. They're the little hairs here, and that's where the water is going to enter first. So it's going to enter in the root hairs. The outside's called the epidermis. Hey, we had an epidermis on the leaf. It was the outer layer right below the cuticle. So the epidermis on a root is the outer layer as well. The next one is the cortex. We'll learn what jobs these have in a bit, but the cortex is the inner ring, one of the inner rings. We have the endodermis. So epi means above or over. Endo means in. Think of en. En is the Spanish word for in. So the endodermis is the layer inside. We have the xylem. A lot of times it's in this cross shape in the middle. That's going to transport our water because xylem transports water. And then we have our phloem. We're going to learn what phloem is, but for now, just label it. Basically, it's going to transport our sugar or our food. So this is a root cross section. So why do we have root hairs? If you take a look, here are all the root hairs. Notice root hairs make it a lot easier for water to get in because it increases the amount of surface area they have. It basically increases the amount of space that they can draw water up. So just another diagram, right? Transpiration, water evaporates from the leaves. Cohesion, water molecules stick together. Adhesion, they stick to the sides of the xylem. And it gets pulled up like a straw. And then water is going to enter the root. So that's it for xylem. We will do phloem on another day.